Picking the body off. Headed for the shop. Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, on a beautiful Friday afternoon. It's quite warm, however there's a breeze. I just spent an hour outside, as you can see in the lead-in videos, taking things out of the bed of this truck, lifting the bed off it and setting it outside and pushing her in the shop. This truck belonged to a friend of mine's grandfather in Kansas. It's quite a story. I'm sure I'll fill it in as I work on it. And it showed up here in summer of 2011. We took it all apart. It wasn't, I guess we did make it run first. Technically it did sputter a little bit. Had a small block Chevy, turbo 400, and a 7.5 inch, appears to be a G-body 10-bolt rear end. So, and there was great hopes. My buddy took the cab and a bunch of other parts, all the new parts home that came with it. The frame and the rear bed lived here until the summer of 2017. So what, that's that, 6 years? He decided he was paying a storage unit to store all the pieces, and he was going to move, and he was done with this truck. So I gladly bought it, and it's been on this property. All the pieces that they're absolutely everywhere around here. It's gonna be a trick just finding them, but that's okay. That's what I do. Of those 7 years that I've owned it, I kept the cab inside all but the last 2. And all the fenders and everything else, because they were, prepped for paint. I think it probably looks better now that 2 years of weather has hit it. It's been raining on the interior and whatnot, but it's highlighted the areas that still need work. However, for instance, like underneath the cab was painted with something, it's absolutely just falling off. So before I bolt the cab down, I'll lay it on its back, do a little scrapey, and painty. This is not going to be a restoration. That isn't going to happen. It'll be a rattle can restoration. It's definitely function over form. I mean, it'll be a cool truck. I don't want it nice. I gotta fight myself on that, because half the time I sit there daydreaming, I'll just push it outside and paint the whole thing one color. Well, I guess we'll get there. Maybe. Kind of takes all the, if I was looking, I can't do the rat rod mechanically, but looks wise, I'm okay with it. So anyway, it's inside. Yes, I have tons of other projects. Don't you worry about that. I cannot let this one sit around. I have to work on it to a point where it looks like a truck again, and inspiration will come. And if I'm going to put, one thing hinges on the next, like all projects. I have all kinds of powertrains I could put in it, but if you don't have a hood and fenders to protect the engine, it's just going to get full of water. The same with the front brakes. I have disc brakes to put on this. It has a early first-gen Camaro, third-gen Nova front clip. It's okay-ish. The welding's not that great, but I guess we'll grind it and touch it up. It's there. We're going to attempt to use it. But there's no sense of putting nice rotors on there to have them rust, so you need fenders over them to at least shield them somewhat from the weather. And that goes for the whole project. So what do they say? If you're going to eat an elephant, you do it a bite at a time. Well, today I've shoved it inside. Again, 7 years this week. I can't let it sit around anymore. And step one is this weak differential has to go. Probably, it looks like they use G-body shocks and made mounts all the work is super crude. However, you know, if it's functional and I can make it look halfway decent, it'll probably stay. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, a G-body rear end never mounted on leaf springs, so I can see where they cut the ears off for the upper control arms, and I can see it's a 7.5-inch rear, so that's where I determined it's definitely a G-body 7.5 or 7 3/4, whatever it is, non-posi. Step one, I'm going to take the rear wheels off. If you notice in the pictures, it has nice wheels and tires on it now. It had 4 roll-around wheels and tires. In fact, the day we took it out of the chicken coop, actually covered in chicken poop, we had to go buy at the junkyard in the town we were in $25 for a S10 wheel just to make it roll, because there was only 3 wheels. We looked through the whole barn and it only had 3 wheels. So in order to get it up onto the trailer, might have used a rollback that day. I don't remember. It was hot. I remember that. It was hot the day we rescued it from the chicken barn. It was hot 7 years ago this week when I hauled it to my house, all the pieces in my dump trailer, and unloaded them originally in the upper garage, and then to a storage box, and then in this shop, and then finally outside. So let me take the rear wheels back off. Oh, these are, anyway, so I took off the roll-arounds, and I have more wheels and tires than any sane person should have. These are actually 4 nice ones. I like the size differential, bigs and littles. These might be the ones, who knows? And I know the width of this rear end is perfect. It clears the body, it looks nice, you know, fit-wise, so we need to duplicate this. I have 2 9-inch Fords all done. One's, I think, 57 3/4, and one is 60 inches, I think, 59 or 60. I think this is going to take the narrower of the 2, and that I actually had that rear end under the LS swap to Dart. If you ever wonder what happened to it, whole nother story, but I got the rear end back out of it, and there's spring purchase on it. You think I'll get lucky enough that they'll be the right width? Well, stay tuned. Let me do a little work, and I'll get back to you. Well, we're back. I measured the rear axle that's in the truck, and while I was correct that a G-body 7.5-inch rear is 58 inches, and every dimension I'm going to tell you is wheel flange to wheel flange. Nothing else matters at this point when you're trying to make something fit. You're only going to confuse yourself. So wheel flange to wheel flange. A G-body is 58 inches, so I thought, I knew I had a 57 1/4. Could probably sneak that in. That was the one out of the Dart. And this is a 59 right here. This is the one I really wanted to use because it has a Speedway, positive traction, 370 gear. I just built it and there's nothing welded to it. So it would be a home run. But the rear end in this must be out of, I don't know if they put the 7.5 in an Impala or a station wagon. It definitely has the ears for the factory GM 4-link style rear end that have been cut off. Definitely a 7.5, but it's 61 3/4 wide, wheel flange to wheel flange. So if you call that 62, I mean that's a B-body Mopar 8 3/4, but I don't have one, and I'm not a Mopar guy. I do have a C-body, but that's 63 plus inches. Not going to work, and I wouldn't put the time into it. In the land of General Motors, 68 to 72 Chevelle is 62.5. That would work, but I don't have one, and I would only use a 12 bolt. And to be honest, even if I had a 12 bolt, I wouldn't put the effort into it. I'm kind of persnickety when it comes to rear ends and how much effort I want to put into them and how disappointed I want to be down the road. I'm geared toward 9-inch Fords. I have an 8.8 outside that's pretty close, but it's pretty rusty, and I'm not an 8.8 fan. So I do have a second generation Camaro that's 62.5, and It's only got a 241 or 249 gear. I have two of them. Both have limited slip differentials. Don't feel like re-gearing it. I don't know what series, what gear you can put on that differential anyway. And now we're talking effort. Still got to cut the spring perches off. Not worth it to me. I hung on to them because I picked them up in a trade, and out back they sit. I do have, because I'm a hoarder, I have quite a few 9-inch housings. I don't have any brand new ones. I do have a brand new center. I could build a completely new housing, but in my travels I picked up a 70s and 80s F-150, Bronco, same thing, 9-inch Ford housing, and that one would be 63 1/4, excuse me, 65 1/4. That gives me plenty of room to cut it down a little bit, put on new ends, and I'll have to cut off the mounts and everything, but no big deal. So I do at least have a housing I can use, but it's not going to be as easy as this. Not going to slow me up, and I would never finish this truck if I had to run that 7.5, because even though I don't know, that's what makes me strange. That would stall my project out, having that thing in there. And I can't even explain why. If I'm going to put effort into it, when I'm driving down the road, I want it to make me happy. I chose good components. So another shining example is this morning I pulled 2 transmissions out of the storage box. I pulled out a 4L60E that was behind an LS, a 4.3. I have 2 of them, one behind a 4.3 and one behind a 5.3. So we have 4.8 to 5.3. Get that right. And because a buddy of mine wanted to buy it, I've just been hanging on to it. But now it's out. I'm like, wow, this truck would be a good application for it, because, you know. But right back to the 7.5 inch there. The 4L60 is weak, and I don't want it in there. So I dug out another 4L80E. This one's been, the bell housing's been welded. I have a bunch of 4-wheel drive 4L80E cores that I can convert to 2-wheel drive, so that's an option. I recently picked up a GM Reman 4L80E that's probably going to go in here. All that needs is to be cleaned up and painted probably. I could improve it by taking it apart and fixing it, but it'd probably last 3 lifetimes in this truck the way it is. So. And engine-wise for this truck, I have the brand new ATK 6-liter. That's a good candidate. I also have a horde of 4.8s and 5.3s that are complete right out of the truck. So that's a decision I'll have to make. Probably the ATK 6-liter 460 horse with that GM 4L80E and a 9-inch Ford with probably a 350 gear. 350 to 370, whatever. I got 370s in stock already. And that'll be a pretty good driving rig with about a 30-inch rear tire. It'll be just like my LS Swap Dodge, only with more power. So that's pretty cool. So I guess we'll call this installation or installment number 1. It's in the shop. The beauty of it is I don't have to, if this would fit, I would have thrown it in there. But I got lots of other things to do, starting with probably painting the underneath of the cab. It needs a little repair work here and there. And I bought new cab mounts, and once that's centered, we'll start there. And then maybe plug the powertrain in it and put all the front sheet metal on it. Front suspension, lots of work to do. So, all right, enjoy your Friday evening. Listening to my rambling. Hopefully it improved your day in some way. Catch you later.